Hi, all, and welcome to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show. I am Shirley, a clinical hypnotherapist, advocate, and mental health first responder here at Whispering Zen Hypnotherapy and Wellness. Thank you for coming to the show today. I am so glad you found me where you can come as you are and leave as you want to be. And do you wish you could more freely enjoy a new healthy habit or just get back to feeling like a better you? Well, then I am the person and we need to talk. And although I do specialize working with the LGBTQIA community, I work with everybody and I welcome everybody. So if you need some help, you just need to talk, you need to vent, you need to get it all out, I am your person to talk to. So you can book online at any time at whisperingzen.net or whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. Either one will work. And if you'd like to help out with the show, maybe sponsor us a little bit, maybe buy me a cup of coffee, anyway, you can find me there on whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. Or I do have a Patreon page where just look up Hypno Fairy Godmother, which is where you can find me on all my social medias. If you see it and there's a social media, the Hypno Fairy Godmother is there because I want to make sure that you can all find me anywhere you need me. And I love that. So let's start out the show with a great big deep breath and exhale with a smile. All right, let's get it going. All right, let's start the second part of the beginning half of the show. It works out something like that. It always does. It's kind of weird that way. So, first thing I want you to do is wiggle your toes. That's right. I said wiggle those toes. Now, I want you to wiggle your buns. That's right. I said it. Wiggle your buns, squeeze them together, do whatever you need to do. It's fabulous. Squeezing and wondering, squeezing and wondering. Because you can't do it without relaxing. You can't do it without smiling. It's just one of those things that you have to do. And the next thing I want you to do is definitely take another great big deep breath and exhale with an affirmation. And I got that, and it's going to be okay. It's just something to get you going through the day or, through the week, through the day. Sometimes just for the next hour. Sometimes I just have to tell myself I got this so that I can do this. Because as it turns out, originally I wasn't supposed to be here this week. I was supposed to be doing a talk on the LGBT community and mental health, which is kind of funny because that's sort of what I talk about on the show. So I thought, you know what? Since I was supposed to give this talk anyway, I might as well give this talk to you. And some of you have heard this before, and a lot of these facts and a lot of these definitions and things like that, you've heard them before, but it's always good to know them. And for some of you, this is going to be brand new information, and that's why I tend to rehash or redo, what I talk about because, sometimes people don't always know. And like I said, I've touched on this before, but we're going to talk about how to talk about, making your office more inviting, make your healthcare decisions more inviting. If you happen to have somebody from the LGBTQIA community working in your office or coming to see you, if you are a mental health professional or just a health professional, it doesn't have to be mental health professional. Sometimes actual medical professionals don't know how to work, which is amazing to me, but don't know how to work with people from the LGBTQIA community. And you know what? It's just like working with anybody else. You would think that that would be common sense, but apparently it is not common sense. And the people that know how to just feel comfortable working with the community tend to be, you know, there are not as many of them out there. There's, the whole idea is kind of underrated, and a lot of people from the community don't feel comfortable going to see most doctors, whether it's for your mental health, whether it's just to get a physical. I, in fact, have gone to doctors that I felt completely uncomfortable with. because once they found out that I was part of that community, they started treating me differently. And I don't understand that. When I have people that come to me that tell me, because I do specialize working with the community. So when I have people that come to me and people always ask me and go, I don't know pronouns and I don't know what to call them and I don't know what to say to make sure that I do it right, because there's a lot of crazy definitions out there. There's a lot of acronyms and there's a lot of pronouns and there's a lot of, you know, the LGBTQIA community is a blanket term, and there are about, I would say, 12, 15 other acronyms that go underneath it. So it's not just, you could be bisexual, you could be pansexual, you could be asexual. It all just kind of fits under this umbrella. And when I talk to members of the healthcare community, and they don't know what to do, I just tell them on my intake form. This is so easy. I can't believe people don't do this. On my intake form, it actually says, what would you like to be called while we have our session? Yep, it's as easy as, what would you like to be called? Now, you can ask somebody's pronouns if you'd like to. You can ask somebody's, you don't have to gender. And if you don't know, sometimes using, you know, generic, I hate to say generic, but use the they, them, if you don't know. But like I said, usually if you just ask somebody what they would like to be called, man, it just takes away so much of the guessing. You never guess, you never assume. Honestly, the pronouns I like to use is she, they, because I'm more non binary than I establish was one or the other. And so I use the she because that's less confusing for some people, but I also use the they so I can understand how people feel. Some people just use they, them. Some people feel comfortable using, he, him, she, her, you know, and there's even a generic thing for pronouns called z, them, which some people know about, some people don't know about. But it's nice and generic. And if you don't know, ask. Oh my, yeah, ask. There are so many crazy definitions out there and members of the community, and some of it is political correctness. They say, well, I can't do this because it's not politically correct. Well, to be blunt, it has nothing to do with political correctness. It has to do with common courtesy. Yes, let me repeat that again. It is not political correctness. It is actually known as common courtesy. To ask somebody. And if you think that you're above listening, that nobody would be that rude anymore, everybody knows, everybody is aware, you would be highly mistaken, because it happens every day. People are misgendered. People are not spoke to by a lot of transgender community people that I work with. The worst thing that can happen to a transgender person is that you misgender them because you're rude. And usually it's not because you forgot. Sometimes, you know, and most of the transgender community the same way. They would rather be asked, what would you like to be called, than you just assuming and either misdoing their pronouns, or something as weird well, I guess to me it's just weird, but giving talking to them by their dead name is mean, and it's cruel, and it's unnecessary. You may always have known this person as whatever the name is, but that's not who they are anymore. It's just not. So it's common courtesy. It's asking the question. And I tell you these things, not to shame you or, but maybe just think twice when a client or a customer or a coworker comes to talk to you, that even though they might not fit into your norms, it just takes a second and it avoids a lot of miscommunication. Now, when I tell this to healthcare professionals, whether it's mental health, regular health, could be any type of healthcare professional, or even professional that works in an office setting, sometimes, you know, they're a little hesitant about what to do. And if you just go back to that common courtesy, hey, how much easier is that? If you have somebody come into your office, ask. If you have somebody come into your business, I know it's crazy, but I mean, when I first started in the holistic health business over 20 years ago, like I said, I just added that space and I didn't think about it in the beginning, why it was that important. But I have always had on my intake form, what would you like to be called? Because most people I know, and a lot of family members, and my spouse, and everything else, just think of it this way: nobody goes by their first name. 90% of the people that I deal with, even if they're cisgendered, even if they're, whatever, they don't go by their first name. Most of them go by their middle name. If I called my wife by her first name, she, first of all, would not answer me. And second of all, she would assume that she's in trouble. And most of the people I know that go by their middle name, um, cisgender, gay, whatever, it doesn't matter. If, it's like that old joke: if you're called by your full name, you're in trouble. That's the only time you're ever called by your full name. The only time, like in my case, the only time anybody uses my full name, I know. I had one relative that used to call me by my full name, and she was the only one that used to get away with it. And I knew I wasn't in trouble. That's just what she called me. But if I called most of my relatives and a handload of my friends, if I called them by their first name, then they would assume that they were in some sort of trouble or I was just being rude. Yeah, like I said, if I call my spouse by her first name, she's not going to answer me. And then she's going to look at me like, what? So it's one of those things where whether you're dealing with somebody on a professional level, on a friend level, on a colleague level, somebody you just met, you can introduce yourself and then go, what would you like to be called? Which is easier and makes more sense if you say, what would you like to be called? Other than, what's your name? Because that gets confusing. If I ask you what your name is and you give me your legal name, but you never use it, or you give me technically maybe your dead name or whatever, and you never use it, then that's confusing to me because now I'm going to call you a name that's not even yours. Um, you know, I call you by your first name, you're not going to answer me. Um, I joke around that, with my name, my given name, my given legal name, that I actually answer to anything that starts with an S. Grew up in a great big family, and my dad could never remember all of our names. He knew them, just couldn't quite identify you with this one. So it always made me laugh that I would look to see who he was talking to, and we would just answer him, whether he got the name right or not. And I have been called in my family life, in my professional life, in my business life, artistic, whatever. I have been actually labeled anything that's even close to my name or anything that starts with an S. It's like people tend to go, well, that's close enough. Well, you have to be careful. You have to really be careful. Um, and even if you're, you were brought up to call people Mr. or Mrs., like It's like always be polite to your elders. Miss whatever, Mr. Whatever. Still, be careful. Ask. Ask. Um Most people just call me by my first name or a derivative of my first name, and they never use my last name. Um Whether that's confusing for them or whatever, it doesn't matter, but I always love it when people ask me. So, Basics 101, when in doubt, ask. How much easier does that get? When in doubt, ask. I know. And like I was talking about with the whole um umbrella of the LGBTQIA community, some people just start at LGBT, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and they forget the rest of the alphabet. I remember growing up, you hated to be labeled. I hated to be labeled. Now everybody wants a label. Just kind of go with the flow. The funny thing is that I still hate to be labeled. Um, I belong to a group, and I belong to many groups, but I belong to one particular social group, and we're doing a lot of parades coming up, and we have flags for the things. And the person in charge assumed that I would want the lesbian flag. Well, he assumed wrong. Um, and because of the way I identify. Um, and didn't go beyond, the basic letters, didn't go beyond. And he was trying to assign people these flags by what he thought he knew and what he assumed he knew, instead of that same basic ask. And yes, he was corrected by many of us, not even just me, people going, quit assuming. And just know, that as you're learning these things, if they are new to you, that knowledge is power. Educate yourself. It's okay, but educate yourself from reputable sources. That's very important, because there's a lot of crap information out there. There's a lot of people that disrespect the community. There's a lot of people that disrespect certain parts of the community. There are people that disrespect part of the cis community. And I know not a lot of people understand the whole cisgender thing. All that means, just to clarify this, because there may be people out there that don't understand that. And what that is that's just the community of, you were, let's say, male, and you were born male, and you identify as male, and you have all the attributes. Or female, you were born female, and it's basically your birth gender, your acting gender, and your sexuality. Cisgender is usually, let's say you're female in my case. If I was cisgender, I would be female and straight. I was born female, I am female, and I'm straight. If it was male, born male, act male, straight. That's the cisgender, as opposed to the other letters in the alphabet. And I know sometimes it gets so confusing. I took a class once where they were talking about, just the letters. And it went on to about 15 letters. And I mean, I know the community. I know more about the community than a lot of people do. And there were actually definitions that I didn't know. And that's okay. That's okay. Because you know what? I asked and I learned. And it's about educating yourself and educating others. And if somebody says something that you know is wrong, how somebody's being treated, how somebody's being referred to, I'm going to tell you right now, you have an obligation to speak up. If you're watching a TV show or a radio show, or you're listening to a podcast, and you know that what they're saying is wrong, that they're misgendering, that they're making stuff up, that whatever that is, let them know. Most TV stations or most TV programs know that for every one person that writes in and says something, there's at least 6 to 10 that don't, that feel the same way. So your letter or your email or your text or whatever counts for 6 to 10 people. And they get the hint. They know that, we screwed this up. And sometimes they'll even correct it. Sometimes they'll correct what they did. You know, um, there are things that, when you're just getting to know parts of the community and you're just getting to know and working with people and dealing with people and having with people, you know, nowadays people are learning different things, but it's not just about learning, it's also about unlearning. Think about that. It's not just about learning new traditions or new acronyms, new pronouns, new whatever, but you have to think about and unlearn some of the things. Now, a lot of this has to do with how you grew up, it has to do with who you were around. You know, I grew up in a little place, a lot of homophobic things were said constantly around me. Um, And I did not have the courage to stand up to those. Now, when I hear something that's wrong, and even if it's said as a joke, a lot of these jokes are not funny because they are an attack on people that I care about. But, you know, if you grew up in little town and country, then some of the things you heard are going to be off color. So it's important to correct even the older generation. It is important to correct them. I had to do that this weekend. Somebody that I was around said something, and although I got in trouble, yes, I did, for correcting that person, I felt it was necessary to do it because I was tired of hearing this particular slur. So that's okay. You know what? I stood up. I felt I had an obligation. I took that obligation and I ran with it. And I don't feel guilty about it. Whereas you should not feel guilty about it. Part of our obligation as humans, as just humans, is to correct the wrongs. You know, don't just listen to it and smile and go, God, I hope somebody else handles that. Trust me, you have to take responsibility and handle that. And even if you go up to a coworker, or I've had to do this at doctor's offices and go, please don't call me that. Please don't assume that. You know, um, it's important that you take the knowledge that you know and you teach other people. You just teach other people. It's okay. You know, and it's not just the LGBTQ group, the community. It's like this with any marginalized group, any group, whether they're Black, Latino, AIPI, does not matter. If you hear something that's wrong, then correct them, even if it's not about you. Stand up for your fellow humans. You know what? That person that you stood up for will remember that and will think of you as an ally. And an ally is not just somebody that stands up for the gay community, an ally is somebody that stands up for any community, any marginalized community. And, more and more people are starting to stand up and correct people. And the younger generation that we have now do it more than the older generation. And I know that for some of the baby boomers and stuff like that, they're like, well, this is how I grew up and this is all I know. And guess what? You can learn new. If I tell you that my pronouns are she, they, and people go, they is not, they, them is not a personal pronoun because that means more than one. It does not. Because if you say something like, I don't know where they're going or I don't know them very well, You just use they and them as a singular. Yes, you did. So they them is not more than it doesn't represent a group. It can represent a single person, but always think about that, and try not to label people. How about that? Like I said, growing up, I never wanted to be labeled. It always terrified me to be labeled. Nothing freaks me out more than to hear somebody say, you people. And yes, I have heard people look at me and go, well, you people, man, if you want to see me go into attack mode, and I don't care whether it's about me, I don't care whether it's about, you know, I belong to a large community, and some of them are Latino, some of them are Black, some of them are bisexual, transsexual, whatever it is. If you're ignorant enough to use or say the word those people, then you need to be corrected immediately. And if you hear those people, then you need to correct, you know. But when you're labeled or when you're labeling somebody, you're going off of things that maybe it's something that you knew before, maybe it's something that you're just hearing, but don't do it. Don't label. I know a lot of people need labels because, but to me, this is me. When you label somebody, you're sticking them into a little tiny pigeonhole. And let's say you're looking at me. You're not, when somebody goes, people like you. Actually, I had somebody refer to me as your kind. I'm like, my kind? Are you talking female? Are you talking plus size? Are you talking white? Are you talking gay? Are you talking pink hair? What are you people? Because, and yes, I corrected them, and yes, they decided that I was not their people. And it's okay. I don't need people like that in my life. You don't need people like that in your life. Sometimes you have to let people go because you cannot fix stupid. You cannot fix ignorant. You cannot change a lot of these things. So it's okay, you know? And also know there's a lot of do's and don'ts, you know? And people aren't going to agree with what I say. Most people are not going to agree with what I say. I always do what I call the 51 to 100%. It's kind of the 51 to 100% logic. And it's just a guide because 51% will either agree or disagree with me. And that's fine. Everybody's allowed an opinion. Everybody's allowed to say what makes them feel good. Just know that depending on what you say and depending on what you do, there will be consequences. Um, there will be consequences. And it may not be immediate. And some people call those consequences karma. Sometimes I have seen people go on just rampages and tirades about whatever it is and gotten fired. And you know what? I'm okay with that because you are allowed to say what you want, but you also have to know that there are, consequences. And here's the thing with some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to talking about the LGBTQIA community. Things that you should say, things that you should avoid. And it's not like we're going to come up to you and yell at you or anything, but we may slightly correct you if you say them wrong. People used to talk about, I'm going to start with a big one. People used to talk about hermaphrodites. Well, that's a really stigmatizing word and it's really inaccurate and negative. So we just refer to people as intersexed. It's a calmer word, it's a nicer word, and it's more inclusive and it actually makes more sense. Um, a lot of us, when you're talking about the gay community, we would rather say that you are the gay community or that we are part of that community instead of going, oh, they're homosexual, because that has also been a bad misdiagnosis, and it's been used as a slur. We want to be more inclusive, not less. So, um, when people need to know that label, I usually just go with gay. I'm not going to go, I am a homosexual. It just sounds weird for one thing and a little too formal, and the bad connotations, the really bad connotations, you know? And it's like when a person is transgender, you just say that they're a gay or transgender person. You don't say they're a gay. And I've never understood why it's like you're a okay, it's not that that person is a one of a kind. They're just part of a group. Say that they are a person. I think that's a big deal as to what I'm trying to get across is that when you talk about both genders or all genders, don't just say you're a thing, because we're back to the negative. We're back to that whole negative thing, you know, of when you're talking about somebody that's either born male or born female. Maybe they were assigned female at birth. Maybe they're male bodied. But instead of just assuming that they're going to be called a male or a female, because sometimes what you've been assigned at birth is not actually who you are. It kind of goes that way with the intersex people too. A lot of doctors, when somebody was actually born intersexed, the doctor would make the decision whether they would be raised male or female. Think about that. When you're born, somebody that doesn't know you because you're actually a couple hours old, that person makes a decision and sometimes won't even let the parents know. They used to just never let the parents know and go, we've decided that this person, this little person that you just had, is male. Well, maybe that little person, the inside is actually female. And a lot of transgender people are actually intersexed because what they were assigned at birth is not who they are. Um, and it's kind of tragic, actually, that it is. And the other thing is, don't refer to people as an it. Please, whatever you do, it is a thing. It is not a person. She, him, they, them, whatever you want to use, that is just fine. But whatever you do, whether it is a person you just met, a colleague, a client, whatever it is, please do not refer to that person as an it. You wouldn't want to be called an it. An it is like a mailbox, and it is not a person. And it is an object. And we are not objects, we are people. Use they or them if you don't know. I would rather be referred to as a they, a them, anything else than be referred to as an it. And I'm guessing you would too, you know, and ask the question. I was actually on a call this morning with another group of hypnotherapists, and we were discussing what to call a group of people. And sometimes now, and yes, this is a little more politically correct, but you don't always want to say ladies and gentlemen. You could say everyone, you could say honored guests, you could say folks, you could say peeps. You can say, there's a lot of other words to include everyone instead of just saying ladies and gentlemen. And yes, like I said, I know that this is more politically correct than anything else, but be inclusive. Everybody, everybody, because sometimes you really, really don't feel like you fit into a category. And if you don't fit into a category, saying that put you in a category and you don't feel. One of the stage hypnotists that I was talking to this morning actually said that he started out his show saying, ladies and gentlemen, and people got up and left because they felt he was being non inclusive. And he was really shocked by that because he is a gay man and he thought he was being just fine. And now he always asks, or he changed the beginning of his show to make sure everybody feels like they're included. And it's all about making everybody feel like they're included and a family. And by family, I don't just mean blood relatives. A family, you have the family you were born with, like it or not, you do have that family. And then usually as you get older, you start making the family that relates to you. I have my birth family, and then I have my community family. And I have some friends that are more like family than some of my other family. So everybody's included, everybody's feeling great, nobody's referred to an it. So, you know, just important stuff. You know, if you are lucky enough to have somebody in your life that comes out to you, that they feel comfortable enough to you to do that, to tell you what their problems is, and whether it's coming out, whether it's they have a problem, no matter what it is, when you're dealing with people in any type of situation, we are talking mental health professional, we are talking any type of health, we're talking work, we're talking school, we're talking whatever. If you have somebody that feels comfortable enough to tell you the thing that they hold deepest and most sacred inside of them, be there for them. And know that that's the hardest thing that this person has ever had to do. I can tell you from experience, hardest thing I ever did. One of the hardest things that I've ever done is come out to my family slowly. Because you do it in threes and fours, twos and threes, sometimes ones. You know, when people come to me and they want to talk to me and they have something that they want to vent or that they want to know about, be there for them. Open up yourself. Don't and ask, do you want me to listen or do you want me to give you my advice? And that depends on which set of ears you have open. When somebody is making those huge decisions to tell you something that means so much to them, be there for them. Be open, be honest, but be there for that person to just listen, you know, and know that when they tell you, you may be the first person that your friend, coworker, family member, whatever, has ever talked to you about this. Whether it's coming out, whether it's medical, whether it's mental health, whether it's how their day was, how stressed, how whatever. You may be the first person that they ever feel connected to enough to, to tell. So be there, you know? And don't try to determine how to react. Don't try to predetermine how to react. Because sometimes we concentrate so hard on as soon as somebody goes, I have something I want to tell you, or I have something I need to tell you, or do you have a minute to talk? We're so busy trying to figure out how we should react that we're not actually listening. We're not actually paying attention because we're trying so hard to react. Do we react straight? Do we react surprised? Do we react, we're thinking so hard about the next step that you're not actually there for that person. You know? Your brain is everywhere except for that person. That person that came to you. And it can be really dangerous and unhealthy and unhelpful to whomever it is that comes to you. Think about, how important that is that they came to you and how special you should feel. Um I had a person that I was working with that said, they needed to come out to their father and they wanted to know how to react. or they wanted to know how to predetermine how their family member would act. Well, first of all, you can't do that either. So I said, tell them what you're going to tell them and then stop. Just stop. Give that person time to absorb and then react. And usually, once you do that, and it can be, you know, I have, it could be a mental illness, it could be an injury, it could be a work thing. It doesn't have to be something huge like coming out, it could be any situation. But the important thing is, if you're gonna think of it as the, if you're going to tell somebody something, if you're going to tell somebody something, this is how you would want them to react. You would want them to actually listen and react later. So think of it as much as, if you were on the other side. And don't say things like, I always knew, or, refer to them as your new whatever friend. Because whatever they tell you, they're the same person that they were before they told you. If somebody's dealing with a mental illness and they tell you that they're bipolar or that they suffer from depression or whatever, that's a symptom. That is not who they are. If they come out to you as gay or transgender, that's great, but don't think of them, they're the same person. So react to somebody else as you would want them to react to you. Because I'm telling you right now, most of you that are in my audience, well, actually, I don't know this, so I don't want to say that. But think of it this way: if you're a cisgender or straight person that's listening to me, you've never had to come out. You've never had to tell your family and friends that you were straight. If you don't have a physical or a mental illness, you have never had to tell somebody that you feel great. You've never had to tell somebody, no, I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't do this. Think of it from the point of view of the person telling you, because they do have this issue and it's just a part of who they are. It's just one little tiny part. It is not who they are in general. Um, when, when I came out to my family, I was the same person I was before I said it. But you don't want to say things, and the other thing is that you're allowed to ask questions, whether it's physical illness, mental illness, coming out, whatever it is. Feel free to ask questions, but don't be probing questions. There are personal barriers that you really don't want to cross. No matter what it is. And, know that they trusted you. But in any relationship, whether it's your straight friend telling you about a straight problem, don't go, don't cross the, where the line is. We all have personal boundaries. Don't cross that personal boundary. And if somebody does, you're telling them about something and they kind of cross that line, I always tell people, whoops, cross that line, walk it back. And I can do it in a way that makes people laugh. But some people can't do that. And they don't know ways to tell people, you know what, that was a line. Sometimes I'll just look up and go, line, and people know to stop right there. There are things that I do not want to know about your personal life. There are things I do not need to know. Maybe it's something I really want to know, but it's not something I need to know. And if that's just going to make you feel uncomfortable, you know, but no, treat that person with respect. You know, don't tell everybody this new information, because usually if that person came to you, that person, coworker, family member, whatever, came to you about anything, just take it on faith and take it on, I don't know whether faith is the right word to use, but just know that they probably don't want everybody to know. So just realize that they're telling you this is not something that you get to tell everybody else. This is not something, that you're allowed to show interest, you're allowed to show curiosity, be a great support system for them, but just because somebody told you doesn't mean that you have the right to tell somebody else. Um Even if they didn't say don't tell anybody about this, we're back to common sense and common courtesy. If I tell you a secret and you know whether I go, please don't tell anybody about this, just know that unless I say you can tell the world, don't tell anybody else. It's none of their business. I trusted you to tell you. This person trusted you. Or if you feel like you can, a lot of my clients go, are you going to tell anybody? No, I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't tell my spouse. I don't tell my best friend. I don't tell anybody. Whatever you tell me stays with me, especially if you're a client. But even if you're a friend, it's not for me to tell the world about your issue. It's if you want to, then you get to, you know, and it's important. It's important that no matter what it is, whether it's, you know, a work situation or a personal situation, or if you work for a company and somebody comes to you as a friend or maybe as a supervisor, know that you hold some responsibility, that you hold something, you know um be welcoming. Be welcoming. If they need some assistance and they say maybe that they're dealing with a mental health issue or a physical health issue, hopefully you're trained enough. But if you're not, find out how you can help them without spreading the rumor everywhere around. You don't need to do that. Trust me, you do not need to do that. So, like I said, today I was supposed to actually be talking at a conference about talking about mental health and talking about working with the LGBTQIA community. And I thought, since I'm supposed to be talking about that anyway, I thought I'd fill in a few things. For some of you, probably old information. Some of you, you may have heard something this time that you didn't hear last time. Some of you, this may be all new. And, you can always reach out to me. If you have any other questions, always reach out to me. Always. I am on every possible social media there is. All you have to do is look for Hypno Fairy Godmother, because trust me, there is no other Hypno Fairy Godmother besides me. And if there was, I would be very upset. So there's no other Hypno Fairy Godmother. Or you can contact me at whisperingzen.net, whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com, any social media. If you want to know more information, if you have a weird question, I get people sometimes that text me and email me questions that they don't feel comfortable asking during the show or asking, anybody else. Remember, I'm going to be there for you. So I'm always here for you. And my shows are always, they're always on Facebook. They're always on YouTube. You can download them. You can do whatever you want with them in case you think of something later and you re-listen to the show and you go, oh, okay. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. And it has been my incredible, incredible pleasure to be even a small, small part of your journey. And I hope it's been calming and maybe a little bit of fun, because that's what I like to do. But mostly I hope that wherever you are, you're a little bit closer to who you really want to be and who you want to become. I am Shirley, your clinical hypnotherapist, activist, and mental health first responder at Whispering Zen Hypnotherapy and Wellness. And I love working with my clients and maybe you, and we work as a team to find the best way to get you back to feeling a little bit closer to who you want to be, or back to who you wish you could become. A lot of us are striving to become who we wish we were when we grew up. I'm getting closer. I hope you are too. So I work online so I can be anywhere that you are, which is wonderful when you're online and I can help you out with any situation. And if I don't know, I will find out for you, because I never give up. I never quit trying. So I realize hypnosis isn't for everybody. It kind of freaks some people out. Some people just need coaching, and I can do that for you too. So let's see if maybe we can work together. I would love to. So, again, I'm Shirley, clinical hypnotherapist. And if you want to book a consultation or you just want to talk to me, whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. Look for Hypno Fairy Godmother on everything. And we're going to take one more deep breath because, boy, it's been a day. Slowly exhale with a smile. Thanks for tuning in today. It has been an extreme pleasure for me. I hope it's been that way for you. Remember to tell all your friends about the show, and I promise I will be back next week with a brand new show and a whole lot of love. So have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.